5 years of marriage had taught me how to arrange a home like a love letter. I used to believe that meant I was lucky. The morning Ethan came back from his 6-month work trip, I woke up before dawn, when the windows were still the colour of bruises. I lined my gifts on the coffee table like proof that I still knew him. A limited edition lighter he'd once joked he'd sell his soul for, a first print of an old book he'd mentioned in passing, a tie in that shade of midnight blue he said made me look dangerously elegant. I made the house smell like comfort, warm broth at the perfect temperature, the exact wine chilled on the exact shelf he liked, the dishes he always ordered when he was too tired to pretend he wasn't spoiled. In the mirror, I adjusted my hair and smiled at my own reflection like a fool waiting to be praised. And then the front door opened. The hinge made a dry, ugly sound that split the morning in half. Ethan stepped in, coat still carrying the cold of the airport. But the thing that froze my blood wasn't the luggage or his tired eyes. It was the arm he was wearing, like an accessory. A woman clung to his elbow, fingers threaded into him with the familiarity of habit. She walked half a step ahead of him, as if the house already knew her. Then she stopped in front of me, lowered her eyes, and smiled like a saint. Her hand, pale, careful, rested on the gentle rise of her belly, and stroked once, lightly, a gesture made for witnesses. "Vivian," she said softly, as if we were old friends meeting for tea. "It's been a while, 3 months, maybe a little more." The curve was subtle, but unmistakable, round and precious and deliberate. In one sharp second, I heard my pulse slam against my temples. I looked at Ethan. He didn't flinch, didn't avert his gaze. He stood there calm, casual, like a man who'd brought home a new purchase and expected applause. Before I could speak, the woman stepped closer and took my hand, cold. Her fingers were icy, but her voice was sugar. "Please don't get upset. This is my fault. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Don't blame Ethan." I yanked my hand back like it had burned me. "Your fault!" I laughed, and it came out thin, sharp. "You're over 3 months pregnant and you're calling it your fault. What? Are you going to tell me the baby fell from the sky into your stomach by accident?" Her lips trembled, her lashes lowered, wet already, and she turned to Ethan with the perfect helpless look. Right on cue, Ethan moved, and he stepped in front of her like a shield, like I was the threat. His eyes landed on me with a tired disgust that made my stomach flip, as if I were the one ruining his day. "Vivian, don't make this bigger than it is," he said. "Ivy is in a difficult situation. She doesn't have a stable place to stay. I'm just bringing her here temporarily." Temporarily. I let my gaze sweep the villa, every painting, every rug, every piece of stone under our feet. It wasn't just a house. It was my parents' wedding gift, my dowry, the reason Ethan's family went from comfortable to high society in other people's mouths. And he said, temporarily, like he was doing me a favour. My voice dropped, each word landing on the floor with a clean, audible weight. "Are you going to explain anything at all?" Ethan didn't answer me. He turned to Ivy instead, and his tone softened so much it made my chest go numb. "Go upstairs, pick a room you like, get comfortable, I'll handle the rest." That voice, gentle, patient, was a voice he had never used on me in 5 years. I stood still and watched him guide her up the stairs like she was porcelain. Behind them, a driver dragged in 3 huge suitcases. 3, half a life moved in while mine was still standing on the welcome mat, with a smile dying on its face. I sank onto the sofa, not because I was weak, but because I was afraid I might lunge at her and do something I'd regret on the wrong day. I told myself to stay calm. Hot tempers lose first. I waited for him to come back down. I waited for handling it. Instead, laughter drifted from the second floor, bright, girlish, needling as pins. Then the doorbell rang. Before the housekeeper could reach it, the door opened. Ethan's parents walked in with stormy faces, like they'd come to discipline a child. They barely looked at me. They went straight upstairs. I followed. At the top of the hall, Ethan was holding his parents' hands, his expression sincere enough to deserve an award. For one humiliating second, I almost believed him. I didn't mean to hide it, he said softly. Ivy's pregnancy wasn't stable at first. I was scared something would happen. Please understand, we truly love each other. And the baby is your grandchild. Please don't blame her. Each word splattered on me like mud. 5 years. Every time I disagreed with his mother, Ethan used to say, "She's old. Just give in." He never once stood in front of me and said, "My wife is not wrong." So it wasn't that he hated conflict. He just didn't mind conflict when it was me losing. Ivy clasped my mother-in-law's hand, eyes red, voice trembling like a practiced instrument. "I never wanted to destroy your son's marriage. It's just, we truly love each other. Please forgive me." My mother-in-law hesitated. I saw it, the quick calculation behind her eyes. For a year, I'd been sending them money on time every month. They spent my generosity like oxygen. Ivy could offer a belly, but not a lifestyle. My heart sank into ice water. Then Ivy didn't give her time to think. Her tears spilled perfectly, like pearls. "The baby is innocent. You can scold me. I'll accept it. I just hope my child won't be hurt." In that instant, I became the villain by standing upright. Ethan's hand lifted, tender, and wiped Ivy's cheek. His voice turned accusing as he looked at his mother. "Mom, say something. You know pregnant women need a stable mood." I almost laughed when a doctor once told me I needed to adjust my health before trying for a baby. Ethan's mother had sneered, 5 years married and you still can't give us a child." Ethan had told me, "Don't take it personally." But now Ivy's emotions were law. His father finally spoke, decisive. "No matter what, she's carrying a Grant grandchild. For the next few months, everyone needs to control their temper." 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me. They stood close together, mother, father, son, forming a neat family portrait. And I stood in the doorway like a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong house. I let a cold smile cut across my mouth. No one thinks to ask what I want. Ethan's jaw tightened. He positioned himself in front of Ivy again. "Vivian, are you deaf?" "Sure, they've said it clearly. What else do you need?" I looked at him and realised what I hadn't wanted to admit. There was no guilt in his eyes, only annoyance. Annoyance that I wouldn't cooperate and play background music for his love story. Ivy sniffled and tugged his sleeve. "Ethan, if Vivian is that angry, maybe I should move out." My mother-in-law snapped instantly. "Move out? Where would you go? You're carrying our grandchild. Who would dare let you leave?" Then she turned to me, her tone turning into a command. "Vivian, you're the legal wife. You should think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture." I'd heard that phrase for 5 years. It always meant my pride had to shrink. Later that afternoon, the housekeeper, Mrs. Han, came to my bedroom with a face full of pity and fear. She admitted Ivy had wanted the master suite. She admitted my mother-in-law stopped her only because we still need Vivian's family support. We can't anger her completely. Then Mrs. Han swallowed and said the real knife. "Madam Grant said all pregnancy expenses should be paid by you since you don't have a child. You can treat it as practicing motherhood." She hesitated again, then forced the last sentence out. "And she said, since you don't have children, Everything you own will belong to this baby someday. I didn't cry. I laughed, loud enough that Mrs. Hunn flinched. So, that was their plan. They'd eaten off me for 5 years and now wanted to swallow my entire life with someone else's child as the excuse. That night, Ivy knocked on my door, crying theatrically in the hallway until Ethan arrived. She accused me of insulting her. Ethan comforted her with, "I'll handle it," then slapped me when I refused to play along. The sound cracked through the corridor like a whip. My cheek burned, my ears rang. I stood still, not because it didn't hurt, but because I couldn't believe the man I once thought was sunlight had just hit me. He snarled, "She's pregnant. She needs stability. Are you trying to stress her into a miscarriage? You're vicious." Something inside me went quiet and final. I stepped forward and slapped him twice, hard enough to tilt his face, hard enough to bloom red across his skin. His eyes went wide, shocked that his good wife had teeth. "You're crazy," he spat. "You hit me. You hit first," I said calmly, staring him down. "And this is my house. Don't you ever forget that." I left the next day and went straight to my company. For years, I'd stood behind Ethan while he stood at the front. That morning, I walked into the top conference room and sat in the centre seat, like it had always belonged to me. "Begin," I said. 3 words, and the room snapped into order. I reclaimed the Lynn Group publicly. I stripped Ethan's access, email, seals, approvals, everything. I told his family, through the grapevine on purpose, that if they wanted their grandson, they could pay for him themselves. For one glorious hour, I believed cutting him off would end it. Then I opened the financial report, and the cold that climbed my spine wasn't air conditioning. Ethan had been preparing for a long time. A shell company, clean name, hidden shareholders tangled like a spider web. He'd moved my core business out through cooperation and internal purchasing, leaving my group shining on the outside while the profit bled into his pocket. If I ripped the contracts apart, my company would collapse under penalties. Factories would stall. Thousands would lose their jobs. Ethan could sit back, collect compensation, and still tell the world he'd been driven out by an ungrateful wife. My tears fell silently, tasting like salt and shame. That evening, my father called. "Vivian," he said, steady, as if he were inviting me home after school. "Don't say anything. Dinner's ready. Come home." When I stepped into my parents' house and smelled familiar food, I broke, ugly, loud, like a dam giving up. My mother held me and whispered, "Cry it out. You're safe here." My father's voice was granite. The Lynn family built this with strength. A boy like him isn't worth much. Worst case, we start over. I calmed down. I ate a few bites. For the first time all day, I breathed like a person again. Then the knocking came, sharp, urgent. My mother whispered, "Is it Ethan?" My father stood, anger on his face. I walked to the door anyway, heart braced for war. I swung it open. "Ethan, you still have the nerve to—" I stopped, because it wasn't Ethan. It was Julian Park, the neighbour my parents once wanted me to marry, the one I'd rejected with a laugh. He stood under the hallway light in a dark coat, eyes deeper than I remembered, like he'd been awake through too many nights. He tilted his head, mouth quirking in a rare playful curve. "What's with that face?" he asked. "Who did you think I was?" Behind me, my father's tension eased into a relieved smile. "Julian, you're here. Come in. Have dinner." Julian stepped past me naturally, like the house still had a place shaped for him. My mother's eyes softened the way they always did when she saw him. Then, impossibly, my parents put on their coats. "We have a little errand," my mother said, too calm to be innocent. "You two eat. Don't wait for us." The door closed behind them with a decisive thud. sealing the house into a quiet that made my heartbeat sound loud. Julian sat at the table like he belonged. He watched me for a moment, then sighed. Not judgment, not pity, the kind of sigh someone makes when they see a wound that's been infected for too long. "The Vivian Lynn I grew up with used to bite back," he said lightly. "How did you get married for a few years and end up coming home to cry to your mum?" My throat tightened. "This is my personal business," I said, forcing cold into my voice. "It has nothing to do with you. Eat and go home." I turned away, trying to escape the warmth of the table, the steadiness in his gaze, the part of me that wanted to collapse again. But I could feel him watching, and I knew, deep down, this door opening tonight wasn't only for a meal, it was the beginning of a counterattack. I barely took one step before the chair behind me scraped hard against the floor. Julian shot up so fast the room seemed to tilt with him. He crossed the space in 3 strides and stopped in front of me, blocking the exit like a man who had decided he was done watching me run. "Vivian," he said my name lower, heavier. "I'm not finished." Then his hand closed around my forearm, warm, certain, not rough, not possessive, but unmistakably final, the kind of grip that didn't hurt and still didn't allow escape. The contact hit me like a memory I hadn't asked for. When we were younger, whenever I got mad or pouted for attention, he used to stop me exactly like this, catch my wrist, pull me back, ruffle my hair and say, all right, as if the world could be fixed by one small touch and one calm sentence. Only today, I wasn't a girl sulking because someone stole her toy. Today, I was a woman whose husband had raised his hand. My tears came instantly, too fast for pride to intercept, too hot to pretend they didn't exist. I hated that my body betrayed me so easily, and hated that the ache I'd been swallowing for years found an exit the moment someone held me like I mattered. Julian released me at once, as if he'd touched a bruise without meaning to. A flicker of alarm crossed his face. "Hey." His voice softened, almost startled. "Why are you crying?" He looked ridiculous for the first time that night, like the kind of man who could walk into a boardroom and turn silence into obedience, but stood completely helpless in front of a woman's tears. "Don't cry," he said quickly, and the words stumbled out like a clumsy apology. "It's my fault. I sounded too harsh. I'm sorry." But I couldn't stop. The tears rolled down in a steady stream, as if a glass had been filled to the brim for 5 years, and someone finally tapped the side. My chest hurt, my throat burned, and the humiliation of losing control only made it worse. Julian lifted his hand and wiped my cheek with a gentleness that felt almost unreal. His thumb moved like he was afraid I might crack if he pressed too hard. Then his fingers slid into my hair, smoothing it back in the same way he used to when I was 16 and furious at the world for reasons I couldn't explain. He forced a small, crooked smile, trying to pull me out of the spiral. "How about this?" he said, voice light, but eyes honest. "You hit me. Just once, if it'll make you feel better." He tilted his head slightly, like he was offering himself as a target. "You know I can't stand seeing you cry," he added quietly. That single sentence broke something in me. I cried harder, because I remembered being a child and scratching the corner of his eye by accident. He was the one bleeding, and yet he was the one who spent an hour coaxing me to stop sobbing, telling me it didn't hurt, telling me it was fine, lying just to keep me from feeling guilty. I remembered my 18th birthday, the coming-of-age party my parents threw. Julian had shown up with a car full of gifts and a box of 1,000 folded paper cranes. I'd laughed at him, called him cheesy, teased him for being dramatic. He'd only looked at me and said something I didn't understand back then. "I don't only see you as a little sister." I hadn't wanted to understand. My heart had already been handed to someone else like a foolish offering. Now, looking back, I could finally admit the truth I'd avoided for years. I'd been cruel without meaning to be. The memories spun through me like a lantern wheel, dragging every missed season, every ignored signal, every moment I chose the wrong man and convinced myself it was romance. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stepped forward and collapsed against Julian's chest, the way a drowning person collapses against a shoreline. All the resentment of 5 years, all the shame of today, all the pain of watching strangers stand on my life and call it love. It finally had somewhere to fall. Julian didn't speak much. He simply wrapped his arms around me and held me like he was anchoring something that wanted to drift apart. Not a possessive embrace, a steady one, a promise without words. Cry, he murmured near my hair. Cry it out. After that, we'll think. That night, he stayed and ate dinner with me. The meal was slow, unhurried, like he was giving my heart time to catch up with my mouth. Like he knew I needed space to say the things I'd been choking down for years. So I told him everything. How I fell for Ethan in college, how easily I mistook charm for character, how I handed him the keys to my company because I thought marriage meant becoming one body, how he brought Ivy into my home like a trophy, how my work, my art, my dignity was treated as disposable, how the company I inherited like a sacred duty had been hollowed out by contracts I'd never truly understood. I told him about the slap, the word be good, the way I learned to soften myself into something smaller, something easier for a man who never loved me enough to see me as human. Julian listened like a professional witness. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He didn't say, "I told you so." He only watched me with a calm that felt like respect. Sometimes he nodded. Sometimes he pushed food into my bowl with a quiet insistence that I eat, like eating could be a way of staying alive. We spoke as if trying to reclaim years we'd wasted not speaking to each other. By the time the clock crept close to midnight, the phone that had been silent all day began to vibrate on the table. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Ethan Grant. It felt like seeing a snake slide across warm tiles. Across the table, Julian's gaze shifted. The gentleness in his face vanished, replaced by something cold and sharp, like a blade pulled from its sheath. He didn't speak, only gave a small nod, permission and warning at the same time. I answered. Ethan didn't greet me. He didn't ask where I was. His voice came through the line already shouting, already accusing, already demanding. "Vivian, it's just Bird's Nest. Where the hell have you been all day? Do you have any idea there's a pregnant woman at home waiting on you?" In his tone, my place wasn't even equal to a wife. I was staff. I listened to him bark, then let a small laugh slip out, soft, almost amused, and colder than I expected my voice could be. "If she wants Bird's Nest," I said, each word clipped and clear, "you can buy it yourself. I'm not your servant, and you don't have the right to order me around." A pause. Then his anger surged back, louder, uglier. "Wow, look at you, talking like that to me. Are you coming home or not?" I lifted my eyes and met Julian's steady stare. Something in me stopped shaking. "Ethan," I said calmly, "before you ask me that, think carefully. Whose house you're living in? Whose money you're eating? Whose life you're standing on?" I heard his teeth grind through the line. "Fine," he snarled. "Fine. I guess this can't go on. Don't come back then. You'll regret it, I promise." Beep, beep, beep. He hung up fast, like a man who'd been slapped and didn't know how to recover his pride. I sat there, phone still in my hand, my chest heavy. I knew it. After that call, whatever remained between us was officially dead. I looked at Julian, eyes burning again. Julian, what do I do? Julian's fist tightened. The tendons rose on the back of his hand. He stared at my phone like it was something filthy that had touched me. That bastard, he said through his teeth. He talks to you like you're nothing. He took a breath, and when he spoke again, his voice had dropped into something terrifyingly controlled. Don't worry. Give me one night. I want to see who ends up regretting what. For a second, he looked unfamiliar to me, not because he was cruel, but because I was seeing a side of him he'd always kept folded away, a quiet, disciplined edge, the kind of sharpness that didn't need to raise its voice to cut. What are you going to do? My voice shook. Julian turned back to me. The frost in his eyes softened slightly, but it didn't melt. I'm not going to do anything stupid, he said slowly. I'm going to make him hurt. He leaned closer, and the words landed like a vow. Hurt where it counts. After that, exhaustion hit me like a tide. I rested my head against his shoulder, my body finally giving up the fight it had been forcing all day. I drifted off without noticing when I crossed the line between awake and asleep. That night, I slept, really slept, and the calmest sleep I'd had since marriage, because for the first time in years, I wasn't alone in a cold house that belonged to someone else's cruelty. When I woke, the first thing I saw was Julian still there. Morning light lay thin and pale across his face, tracing the dark circles beneath his eyes. He was dozing in an awkward position, back against the bed frame, one hand still holding mine, like he'd been afraid that if he let go, I would be dragged back into yesterday. I jolted upright. Julian, you didn't sleep? He lifted his head, looked at me like I was a child waking from a nightmare, and smiled, soft enough to make the air easier to breathe. Not much, he admitted. I had things to take care of. Embarrassment hit me all at once. I realised I was still in yesterday's clothes, hair messy, collar crooked. I reached up instinctively to fix myself, cheeks warming. I'm sorry, I muttered. I was exhausted. I just passed out. Why are you embarrassed? He said, eyebrow lifting. His smile turned slightly wicked, like I've never seen you sleep before. The memory came back immediately. Childhood trips, shared hotel rooms, my parents laughing at us like we were siblings. I grabbed a pillow and smacked him in the face. Shut up, I hissed. Stop talking. He caught the pillow without dodging, just laughed, then gentled his tone. All right, he said. No more teasing. He stood, straightened his shirt, and the playful air slid away like a curtain dropping. For a moment, he looked like an anchor, something stable enough to tie my chaos to. I've arranged things, he said. I'm going to the office now. When you get the signal, go back to the villa. My stomach tightened. What did you arrange? Julian didn't answer directly. He only leaned down and rubbed my head once. Tender, sure. Good food takes time, he said with a wink. You'll see. Then he left. The door closed. The warm house fell quiet again, quiet enough that I could hear my own breathing and the faint ticking of the clock like a warning. I was still holding on to the feeling of being protected when my phone vibrated. The screen flashed the name I didn't want to see. Ethan Grant, I answered. His voice came through like an ultimatum carved in stone. Vivian, final chance. Come home right now. If you don't, I'll make you regret it for the rest of your life. I stared at the ceiling, and the emptiness inside me turned cold and clean. Ethan, I said slowly, the biggest regret of my life was marrying you. A pause, then his laugh, low, mocking. Fine, he said, then don't regret it. The call didn't end. Instead, a sharp crash rang through the speaker. Glass, something shattering. My heart clenched. Then Mrs. Hand's frantic voice burst through, trembling and panicked. "Sir, please calm down. That's the blue and white porcelain vase Mrs. Grant made with her own hands." Crash! Another one. "My God, sir!" Mrs. Hand sounded like she was about to sob. "That oil painting! She painted it herself. Why would you throw it?" The sounds kept coming. A box of paints knocked over, water spilling, metal clanging on the floor, the violent chaos of a tantrum performed for my ears. Each sound was a blade, because he wasn't breaking objects, he was breaking me. The part of me that existed before I became someone's wife. The art student I used to be, the girl with dreams, with exhibitions, with professors who believed in her, with doors open to a life that didn't require permission. I had given all of that up for love, and now love was stamping its shoe into my work. Mrs. Hand's voice cracked, nearly screaming. "Sir, please, these are her heart and soul." Then Ethan's voice cut in, harsh, satisfied. "One last time, Vivian. Are you coming back or not?" I closed my eyes. If I didn't go, he would destroy everything until there was nothing left to remind me who I used to be. I drew in a slow breath and opened my eyes again. My voice, colder than I recognized. "All right," I said. "Wait there. I'm coming." I ended the call. I didn't change clothes. I grabbed my keys and went. And as I drove back toward the villa, I understood something with brutal clarity. This wasn't him trying to bring me home. This was him trying to train me, to prove that even when I stood up, he could still press the right pressure points and make me crawl back. But this time, I wasn't coming back to beg. I was coming back to collect what he thought he could smash without consequence. I'd hit my mother-in-law where it hurt, and the change was immediate. Her momentum collapsed like a punctured tire. Her mouth opened, then closed again, lips fluttering around words she couldn't afford to say out loud. And Ivy, who only minutes ago had been clinging to Ethan's arm like she owned the joint, was suddenly nowhere near him. The moment the security team poured in, her bravery evaporated. She slipped into the far corner of the living room, I half hidden behind a plant and a decorative cabinet, face drained of colour, chin tucked, eyes wide as if she'd just realised the floor wasn't hers to stand on. I walked toward her slowly, one step, then another, measured, unhurried, the kind of pace that made people hear their own heartbeat. I pointed at Ethan, still being restrained by 2 guards, and then looked straight at Ivy, my voice light, almost conversational, like I was checking on an acquaintance. "Ivy," I asked softly, "weren't you calling him Ethan so sweetly a moment ago? Your Ethan's in trouble now. Why are you hiding in a corner?" Her body trembled. She glanced around like a trapped animal calculating exits. I'm not hiding," she stammered, hands flying to her belly like it was a shield. "I care about him. I do. It's just, I'm pregnant. I can't get agitated. I can't be stressed." I nodded like I understood. Then I smiled. "Oh," I said, "so your love only exists when the card still swipes." Ethan roared, furious and helpless at the same time. "If you have something to say it to me," he bellowed. "Don't make it hard for Ivy." Even pinned down, he tried to play hero, tried to stand taller inside a cage, like the posture alone would still make him a man. I looked at him with winter in my eyes. "You want me to aim at you?" I repeated calmly. "Good." Then I turned to his parents and lifted my voice, crisp and clear, no longer a wife in a private argument, but a CEO calling a meeting in the middle of a war zone. "I didn't come back here to scream," I said. "I came to announce 3 things. I raised one finger. First, effective immediately, every secondary card, every linked account, every spending authorization tied to Ethan Grant and his family. I let the pause sharpen like a blade. Is frozen. All of it. His mother's throat made a small, choking sound. I raised a second finger. Second. Ivy wants to stay here. I gave a polite tilt of my head in her direction. Fine. But she stays under terms. What status she has, what room she sleeps in, what money she uses, and every detail goes on paper, signed and dated. I'm done paying for strangers out of charity. I raised a third finger and looked directly at Ethan. Third. If you ever raise a hand to me again, I call the police immediately, and I file charges for domestic violence. You'll explain it to a judge, not to me. Silence slammed down across the room. Even the air felt like it had stopped moving. In the corner, Ivy sucked in a sharp breath, like someone had pushed her to the edge of a cliff. Ethan's parents stood frozen, their faces caught between shock and calculation. They were finally realizing the truth. I wasn't the daughter-in-law they could smooth down with a few lines about compromise and family harmony. I wasn't here to be managed. I was back to take my seat. Ethan's eyes went bloodshot. Veins rose at his temples. He leaned forward against the guard's grip like rage could make him heavier. "Vivian," he snarled. "I apologised. What more do you want from me? What do you want from Ivy? How far is far enough for you?" He still didn't understand. I didn't want a cheap apology. I wanted balance. I wanted restitution. I wanted him to taste, bite by bite, what it felt like to have everything stripped away, exactly the way he'd stripped me. My voice went quieter, almost gentle. "Far enough?" I repeated. I smiled. "When you leave my house, when she disappears from my life, when you return every dollar you siphoned, then—" I paused, letting him feel the weight of it. "Then I'll consider whether I'm satisfied." Ethan stopped pretending. He exploded, frantic and vicious, like a cornered animal still trying to convince itself it had teeth. "Listen to me." He jabbed a finger toward Ivy as if she were a holy relic. "She's in early pregnancy. She can't get upset. She can't be stressed. She's sensitive right now. Can't you just give in a little? Can't you just wait until the baby is born and then deal with everything?" He inhaled sharply, eyes gleaming, voice turning poisonous. "I'm telling you right now, if you make your people back off, we can still fix this. If you don't—" His jaw clenched. "I'll make you and your entire family regret it." I stepped closer until I was directly in front of him. Close enough to see the fear under his anger, close enough that he couldn't hide behind volume. "Ethan Grant," I asked slowly, "did I get Ivy pregnant?" A beat of silence. His expression twitched. I didn't give him time to perform. "You cheated with your ex while you still had a legal wife at home." I pointed at myself. "And now you're demanding the wife make room for the mistress." I glanced at Ivy, who was still clutching her belly, eyes wet, mouth tight with restrained panic. Then I looked back at Ethan. "I'll ask you one simple question." My voice went flat. "What do I owe Ivy?" His lip curled, the smile of a man who believed marriage made him king. "Owe her," he repeated, savouring the word. "You owe her because I am your husband. You owe her because we've been married for years and you still couldn't give me a child. You owe her because what's in her belly is my bloodline." He said it with pride, like the unreasonable person in this room was me. I laughed, out loud. It surprised even me how clear and sharp it sounded. "Ethan," I tilted my head. "Do you hear yourself? Do you not feel your face burning when you say that?" I leaned in, lowering my voice until it cut like steel. "There's a saying," I murmured. "A man who gives horns will eventually wear them." His eyes narrowed. I held his gaze. "You cheat, Ethan," I said calmly. "So how are you so sure the baby in Ivy's belly is yours?" The effect was instant. His entire body stiffened, the self-righteous certainty in his face cracked. Just a small fracture at first, like glass under pressure. I reached into my pocket, not pulling anything out yet, just touching it, feeling the thin folded paper there like a hidden blade. Then I stepped past him toward Ivy and, very gently, placed my hand on her belly, soft enough to resemble concern, firm enough to make her flinch. Her face went pale. "What are you doing?" she whispered, backing away. Ethan shouted, panic and pride tangled together. "Vivian, don't you dare!" he barked. "You are not allowed to drive a wedge between me and Ivy. I've thought it through. This baby is mine." The words sounded strong, but his voice had begun to wobble. Even he didn't fully believe himself. Ivy snapped like a cat whose claws had been touched. She slapped my hand away, cheeks flushing. "Ethan!" she blurted, too fast, too loud. "The baby is yours. Don't listen to her. You remember that night at the hotel?" I cut her off cleanly. "Ivy," I said coldly, "even now you're still trying to act pure." I let my gaze travel over her, hair, makeup, the practiced trembling mouth. "These games fool men," I said. "They don't fool me." Then I turned back to Ethan, and my next words landed like a match in gasoline. "Do you know why we never had children?" I asked. His eyes widened as if I'd just touched the deepest bruise. "What else could it be?" he snarled. "Your body is useless. A hen that can't lay eggs. What good is she to anyone?" The room went dead. His parents didn't move, not because they felt sorry for me, but because they were waiting for my retaliation, terrified of what would come back at them. I looked at Ethan without anger. I smiled, a small smile that made his spine tighten. "Some men have bad seed," I said softly, "and they still blame the soil." I held his stare. "Men like that," I added, voice like ice, "deserve to wear the green hat." His face contorted. "Say it clearly. What the hell are you implying?" I pulled out the folded paper at last, one thin sheet, but it carried the weight of a collapse. "For years I wondered if something was wrong with me," I said evenly. "I went to hospitals. I did tests. Every result said my body was normal." I watched his pupils tighten. "So?" I continued. "After one night with you, I kept a sample, and I had it tested." I lifted the paper higher, letting everyone see it. "Want to guess the result?" Ethan stood perfectly still. His lips moved, but no sound came out. I read it aloud, each word a hammer. "There were 0 sperm cells in your sample, not one." I flung the report at him. It slapped across his cheek like an invisible hand. "I kept quiet because I didn't want to humiliate you," I said. "I protected your fragile pride." My smile turned sharper. "But you had the nerve to bring a pregnant woman into my house and demand I make room." I pointed at Ivy. "Funny thing is," I said, voice silken poison, "you didn't expect that the woman you cheated with might be cheating on you." Ethan's parents went rigid like statues. His mother's eyes went blank. Ethan bent down in slow motion, snatching the paper off the floor, hands shaking so hard the sheet rustled loudly. "No," he breathed, as if denial could be a shield. "No, that's impossible. No, I can't be that kind of man." I watched him like I was watching a verdict being delivered. "It's your body," I said simply. "If you don't believe it, go test again. Test 10 times, I added. "You'll get the same answer." A broken sound tore out of his throat. Not arrogance, not anger, just pure devastation. And then Ivy snapped fully. She stopped acting fragile, stopped performing soft tears. She lunged forward like a drowning woman, grabbing a float, yanking Ethan's hand to her belly. Voice shrill with desperation. "It's fake!" she screamed. It's a piece of paper. I can Photoshop 12 of these in a minute. What does this prove? Her tears fell hard, but her words were knives. Even if it's real, she hissed. Miracles exist. People survive stage 4 cancer. Why can't a strong man like you make me pregnant? She leaned in, Orth voice turning syrupy, hypnotic. You were powerful in bed, she whispered. How could you be a man who can't have children? Believe me, she pleaded. Touch the baby. It's your miracle. I stood there, watching, and I had to admit it. It worked. Ethan's eyes, ruined just seconds ago, lit up again like a desperate man finding one last candle in the dark. Right, he whispered. Miracles. Miracles happen. He grabbed onto her words like they were oxygen. This is my miracle, he said, almost trembling with relief. He turned to Ivy, voice cracking. You wouldn't lie to me, right? Ivy lifted her chin, sweetness back in place like makeup. Never, she said softly. You're the man I love most. How could I lie to you? Then Ethan whirled toward me again, hatred rebooted. Vivian, he snarled. You're evil. I almost fell for it. I almost doubted the woman I love. I looked at him, unsurprised. I laughed once quietly. The woman you love most is Ivy, I said. So you're choosing to stand against me openly? Yes. He spat, as if declaring war. I'll make you regret this. He clenched his jaw and lifted his phone, face twisted with a cruel kind of confidence. You still don't know, do you? He hissed. I drained your company clean. One phone call and it collapses. He took a step closer, eyes burning. I can make you lose everything, Vivian. You believe that? I met his stare, and I nodded. I believe you, I said calmly. He froze, thrown off balance by my agreement. I stepped forward, my voice dropping into something quiet and absolute, each word nailed into place. The fact that I'm standing here saying this to you, I said, serious means I prepared for every outcome. My family didn't survive in this city by betting everything on one company, I continued. Even if the corporation falls. I smiled, thin as a blade. I can build again. Then my voice hardened. But I'd rather watch it burn, I said, than let you keep clinging to me like a parasite. The living room went silent again. Ethan's hand around his phone tightened, and then, for the first time, trembled. Because somewhere deep down, under all his posturing, he understood one terrifying thing. A woman who is willing to burn her own house down is not a woman you can threaten with fire. The second photo wasn't even a photo. It was worse. A record, a printed check-in slip from the hotel itself. Clean, official, merciless in its simplicity. Name, ID number, room class. And there it was, in plain black letters like a verdict. Electric-controlled double bed. And the booking date. God, the booking date lined up perfectly with the window Ivy had used to calculate her pregnancy. The living room didn't just fall silent, it emptied, as if the air had been scooped out with a shovel and everyone was left breathing vacuum. Ethan stared at those lines until his pupils trembled. His whole body began to shake, the sound of his pride breaking coming out through his teeth. An electric double bedroom, he whispered, like the words were foreign and poisonous. Then he snapped his head toward Ivy so fast it looked like it might crack his neck. You told me you were traditional. You told me you'd blush if I even held your hand. His voice cracked, splintered. And now you're renting rooms like this? Something inside his chest shattered audibly, even if no one could see it. Ivy panicked. Her head shook so fast it was almost violent, her voice shrill and thin. No, this isn't real. It's edited. Photoshop. It's fake. She glared at me with the hate of someone cornered, but she still didn't dare leave that corner. Her body was telling the truth, even if her mouth refused to. I let out a small, cold laugh. Edited, I repeated, slow, each word hammered into place. I'm not bored enough to spend my time photoshopping your sins. I took one step closer, not threatening, not loud, just inevitable. Ivy, I said gently, as if I was offering her a cup of tea instead of a noose. Do you want to keep playing the victim, or do you want to admit whose baby you're actually carrying? Beside me, Aaron, calm, composed, cruel in the quietest way, let out a soft scoff. He didn't even look at her anymore, like she'd already dropped from person to case study. And that was when I understood something with a chill at my fingertips. With a family like Aaron's, evidence wasn't a hunt, it was a tap. If he wanted a document, he could have it. If he wanted a hotel log, he could pull it. And that so-called lover's hotel, for all I knew, might have been a name sitting neatly on a list of his family's assets. Ethan's jaw clenched so hard it looked like his teeth might crumble. Ivy, he rasped, eyes blood red as he turned on her. Explain it. Right now. Explain what this is. Is this what you called a miracle? She shrank deeper into the corner, crying, nodding, shaking, like she thought movement could blur reality. This is all a misunderstanding, she sobbed. Tears poured down her cheeks, her voice trembling so convincingly it could have fooled a room full of saints. Ethan, please believe me. I love you. I did rent a room with someone else, but he used protection. The baby is still yours, I swear. I stood there and felt a laugh climb up my spine, cold enough to sting. Protection. But definitely yours. That was the magic of women like Ivy. No matter how twisted the logic, the conclusion always circled back to their innocence. Aaron laughed softly, the sound sharp like ice. Right, a misunderstanding, he repeated, stressing each word as if he was peeling skin. And this misunderstanding started 2 years ago. Ivy froze. Ethan froze too. Aaron didn't give them time to breathe, and he tore off the last layer she was still trying to wear like a coat. The man in the photos isn't a stranger, he said, voice steady, almost bored. He's the man she actually loves. They've been tangled up for over 2 years. She came to you, Ethan, and she still couldn't cut him off. Ivy's mouth opened to deny it, then choked, like an invisible hand had wrapped around her throat. And why she approached you? Aaron continued, glancing at her once, indifferent. Half of it was his idea. The goal's obvious. He let the word hang like a blade. Money! In the living room, someone inhaled sharply. Ethan's mother, maybe. Her face had gone paper white. Ethan's father stood with his mouth open, like he'd just been slapped by something he couldn't see. Aaron spoke again, slow and deliberate, each sentence a nail driven into a coffin. They knew you and Vivian were married for years without a child, he said. So they gambled. They got Ivy pregnant, then pinned the baby on you. That way, even if you broke up, she could extort you for years under the title of child support. My fingers went numb. It was sick. And it was perfect, except for one fatal miscalculation. They had assumed Ethan's pride would protect him. They had assumed he would never accept the possibility that he was the problem. But I had already thrown my infertility result across the room like a grenade, and Aaron had dropped the hotel proof like a second explosion. 2 blades. 2 cuts, no way to crawl back. Ethan looked at Ivy like she'd become a venomous snake in his hands. His voice broke under the weight of rage and humiliation. Is this true? He rasped. Everything he said, true. Aaron's lips curved slightly. His smile was cold. "Technology's advanced," he said. "An amniotic fluid test can confirm paternity. You don't have to wait for birth." Then he tilted his head at Ethan. Pure mockery dressed as advice. "If she's so sure the baby is yours, she won't refuse a DNA test, right?" I stood beside him and smiled too, quiet, prepared, ruthless. "Exactly," I added softly. "You can also go to the hospital again, Ethan. Who knows? Maybe you'll get your miracle. Maybe your condition cured itself overnight." Ethan latched onto the word miracle, like a drowning man grabbing a rope. He dropped to his knees in front of Ivy, eyes wet and frantic, voice shaking. "Ivy!" he pleaded. "Will you do the DNA test with me? Just to prove it, just to clear your name." Ivy stepped back as if he'd stabbed her. You don't trust me?" she screamed, crying harder, performing louder. "Am I that cheap to you? Is that what I am? No, I won't go. I won't. If you don't believe me, then break up with me. Go find your happiness." And then she did something smart, in the ugliest way. She shoved Ethan, still kneeling, hard enough to throw him off balance, and ran. Straight out the door. She knew. It was over. Better to flee dramatically with tears and dignity still half intact than be dragged into a lab and have the results slap her in front of witnesses. The door slammed. The living room was left with nothing but aftermath, blood on lips, tears on cheeks, a tooth on the floor, and 3 people staring at each other like they'd just watched their whole world collapse in 10 minutes. Ethan sat there, hollow-eyed, Al looking at me like I'd cut the future out of his hands. "So, this means I lost the baby, lost the wife, and lost the company." He muttered. "Right, yes," I answered simply. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Aaron stepped half a pace in front of me, calm as a judge reading a sentence. "No," he said. "You didn't just lose those things." Ethan flinched at the word no, clinging to it like it was mercy. Then what?" he asked, swallowing blood. "What do I still have?" Aaron looked down at him with a hard, cold pity. "You're about to take on tens of millions in breach of contract penalties," he said slowly. "A debt you'll spend your entire life choking on. Is that gift big enough for you?" Ethan's spine seemed to dissolve. He crawled toward me and collapsed to his knees, snot and tears pouring out, voice hoarse and broken. "Vivian, please, let me explain. It's all a misunderstanding. I love you. I always loved you. You can't do this to me. If you do, my life is over." His mother lunged forward too, wailing, face smeared and messy. Yes, family can't do this to family," she sobbed. "Vivian, Ethan knows he was wrong. Men make mistakes when they're young. Give him one last chance." His father tried to salvage it with a cheap, emotional voice, like tears could turn time backward, but it was far too late. I looked at all of them and felt nothing but a bone-deep cold. "Enough," I said. "At this point, words are useless." I bent slightly, meeting Ethan's eyes. "The moment you cheated behind my back," I said quietly, "you should have thought about the ending." Aaron, as if he'd prepared this scene long before the actors arrived, tossed a stack of papers onto Ethan's chest. Thud. Fresh print. Warm from the machine. Divorce agreement. "Ethan Grant," Aaron said, each word clean and final. "If you're still a man, sign it. Stop acting." Then he lowered his voice, soft, polite, and lethal. "You know Vivian. When she decides, she doesn't change for the rest of her life. A peaceful divorce is the last piece of dignity she's leaving you. If you make this noisy—" His eyes narrowed. "Your family won't have a place to stand in this city." Ethan held the papers with shaking hands and looked up at me. He still didn't know exactly who Aaron was, but he knew something that mattered more. My power alone was enough to drown him. That night, I watched the three of them, crying, begging, collapsing, leave the villa that had always belonged to me. I called the estate management office and had the entire Grant family placed on the blacklist. From that moment on, none of them would step within 10 feet of my door. I thought it was finished. I was wrong. Because even after you cut the leech off, it still twitches, still tries to crawl back on the warmth it used to drink from. The next morning, the outside of my house turned loud again. At first, I thought it was neighbours moving furniture. I didn't care. Not my problem. Then I heard it clearly. They were saying my name. I frowned and walked out through the gate, and there she was, Ivy, holding a thick stack of flyers like she was handing out salvation. Neighbours had gathered, people who loved gossip the way others loved coffee, and Ivy, standing in the centre like she'd finally found the stage she deserved, was shrieking, she voice sharp with performance. "It's her! Vivian Lynn!" she cried, pointing at me as if she were accusing a criminal. "She looks respectable, but she's filthy inside. She used dirty tricks to destroy my relationship." She strutted a step, waving the flyers. "A woman like this should be spat on everywhere. She didn't care that I'm pregnant. She hit me. She cursed my baby as a bastard." I stood still at my own gate, the cold rising in my chest like floodwater. I had seen lies before, but this was shameless in a way that made my stomach turn. The neighbours' eyes shifted. Curiosity became suspicion. Suspicion became judgment. "Heard rich girls are like that," someone muttered. "Money can't buy character," another whispered. "I always wondered," someone else snorted, "why she stayed home instead of running her company. But something was off." I looked at Ivy and finally understood her plan. She couldn't bleed Ethan anymore. So she came for me. She used her belly as a shield, public opinion as a knife, my reputation as a rope. Before I could speak, a man's voice cut through the murmurs, low, steady, heavy enough to crush the noise. "Don't listen to this woman's lies." I turned. Aaron stood at the edge of the crowd, eyes like steel, looking straight at Ivy. "She is the one who destroyed Vivian Lynn's marriage," he said loudly. "She's the mistress. Vivian is the victim." My heart clenched, because last night, after everything settled, I had let him leave. On paper, I was still legally married, and I couldn't afford one camera angle, one rumour, one caption that would turn my clean exit into mud. Aaron had understood without asking. No pressure, no argument. And he'd left as calmly as if he'd only been a passing wind, like the man who saved me from hell wasn't him, but coincidence. So seeing him here, in daylight, standing between me and a mob, made me freeze for a beat. Someone in the crowd pointed at him. "Who are you?" they demanded. "Do you live here?" Ivy's eyes lit up like a predator catching scent. She pounced. "This man," she screeched. "He's Vivian's paid boy toy, her gigolo. This is proof she cheated. She even drags men back to her own house. Everyone can see how disgusting she is now." The crowd erupted in whispers. Lenses turned, phones lifted. A tongue could kill without a blade, if it was loud enough, relentless enough, shameless enough. Aaron took one calm step forward, standing directly in front of Ivy, his voice slow and clear. "There are surveillance cameras at the gate," he said. "Audio and video. Do you understand the consequences of defamation?" He lifted his chin slightly. "I can call the police right now." His right hand tightened and released. Tightened and released. Not fear. Control. He didn't want to get dirty. Ivy saw it, and she got cockier. "Vivian!" She sneered at me, arms crossing like she owned the street. You're impressive, doing dirty things and then using your lover as a shield. Then she smiled like she was offering mercy. I'll give you both a chance. Find a quiet place and talk to me nicely. If you don't... Her eyes gleamed. I'll make the whole city know. I inhaled once. The crowd was loud. The morning was bright. And inside my head, there was a strange, empty calm, like the moment before a storm breaks. I walked straight through the staring eyes, pushed past two people who tried to block me, and stopped in front of her. Ivy, I said, my voice steady enough to surprise even me. You can talk about me, but you don't get to talk about him. Smack. I slapped her, hard, clean. No hesitation, no mercy. Years of strength training weren't for holding teacups. Her cheeks swelled red instantly. Blood shone at the corner of her mouth. The crowd gasped. Ivy stared at me like I'd become a ghost. I leaned slightly closer, my voice cold, carrying clearly. Aaron didn't hit you because he's a gentleman, I said. Not because he's afraid. He doesn't want to dirty his hands. I smiled. I do. Then, very softly, I added the final twist of the knife. And this slap, I'm sparing the child in your belly, because I don't want it to be born to a mother with no shame.